My next guest is Dr. David Franklin. He is the author of Advice from the Principal's Desk: Five Pillars of School Leadership. He's also an award-winning school administrator, education professor, curriculum designer, and presenter. He earned a doctorate in educational leadership from California State University, East Bay, a master's degree in education technology from National University, and holds a BA in music from the University of California, San Diego. Dr. Franklin is also an educational consultant and assistant professor of education for Colorado State University and a Marzano research fellow trained in high reliability schools, instructional rounds, collaborative teams, and PLCs. Well, welcome to the podcast, David.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Dana.
Well, we'll start off with a question I ask everybody. Tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
So it's kind of a funny story because it was my first year. I was a new principal at an elementary school, and I was coming in, and this was a very high achieving school. Been around for about 35 years, and just I was brought in, just to kind of keep things as they were, not to rock the boat too much. But one thing that I noticed when I stepped foot on campus is that the culture of the school is very rigid. It was very kind of authoritative, from just the adults down to the kids. And that's not my style. And one of the things that I love is Halloween. And kids love Halloween. But at this school, they didn't allow the kids to dress up. And again, this is an elementary school. And I know, like, when you get to middle school, high school, there's other things to consider. But when children are 7, 8 years old, Halloween is one of the most fun days out of the year for most kids. And they didn't let the kids dress up. And so I went and I started talking to a few teachers about, hey, like, why don't we allow this? And I got very different viewpoints depending on who I was talking to. A lot of teachers said, well, we've never have. And so that's why we don't do it. And I bring back, that old quote of like, well, that's that's really the terrible way to not move forward or change something. But some teachers were saying, was like, oh, it's too crazy. We don't allow it's just a crazy day and we don't like it. Well, I did a straw poll, and I made it anonymous, and it was basically 80% of the staff wanted the kids to be able to dress up and have this fun day at the school. And it was really only these very few, very loud minority group of teachers that wanted to stay. So I went to the staff meeting, and I was delivering this information, and I was trying to be funny because I knew, like, some of these teachers were going to get really upset about this. And I borrowed my friend's football helmet. And I just put it on and I delivered the news. I said, like, I know some of you are upset about this. So if you want to crumple up the agenda staff, the paper from our staff meeting, crumple up and throw it at me, you can't. Just get it out. And they fully did. And they were very upset with me about it. But you know what? Like, it was such a fun day. I think they needed to see, like, it's a fun day. We had parameters around it like every school did, but the kids had so much fun. The parents were just so excited to finally have those school pictures of their kids in, in their Halloween costumes. It was fun. It was safe. They still do it now. This was 15 years ago. They still do it now. And so it's kind of like it's a weird story about being in the trenches, but it was really about changing the culture of the school and making sure that every voice was being heard. But when I say that I had teachers very upset about this, I mean, they talked about it for a very long time and would come up to me like, we didn't want this changed. And I kept thinking to myself, we have bigger things to worry about than like this one day. But yeah, that's my story from the trenches.
Well, it's also about finding really out what people want, because that's something you decided to do with the survey. And
I had a lot. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of teachers that really wanted this, but were scared to speak up. And I became their voice in this because I was new. And it's like, I don't know. I played the game of I don't know, for about a year or two at that school. Like, well, I don't know. No one told me that. And so this is what the vast majority of people wanted. And I didn't think it was fair that you had just a select, very loud minority group that was dictating everything. And again, it was such a fun day. And again, all the parents came to the school that day, and it was a great moment for the school.
Yeah, and then they continued with that tradition. So for me, like, having elementary age kids go through and having those Halloween parades, it's like I would think most schools would have it, but you know, there's some schools that like you came to just don't have it. So
Yeah, I mean, and I have all those pictures of the parades of my own children, like because I would find a way to sneak away for an hour and go to the
Mhm,
parade and take pictures and go back to my school.
mhm.
And they're you can't get that time back. I mean, those are
Yeah,
those are important
yeah,
times with kids, and want them to have those experiences.
yeah, yeah. So we're going to talk about your book, Advice for the Principal's Desk: Five Pillars of School Leadership. So talk a little bit about the five pillars and
Yeah.
how it's a tool that can help new admin or even veteran admin that really want to improve their leadership.
Yeah. So when you become an administrator, I'll be the first person to say this, is that you really don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm,
It's you're taking your master's courses, you're trying to figure out, but until you actually are doing it, you really feel it's imposter syndrome. You don't really know what's going on. I mean, there was a 3 month difference between me being in the classroom and me going to be
mm-hmm.
an assistant principal, and nothing magical happened over the summer.
Yeah.
So I wrote this book because I remember being a brand new admin, just feeling very overwhelmed. Like, what do I do? What do
Mm-hmm,
I focus on? I don't have my, I was a middle school teacher, so I don't have my 150 students anymore. I've got
mm-hmm,
600 students,
mm-hmm,
and I'm more interacting with teachers and parent. Like, what do I do? And so everyone had all these different opinions, and I wanted to boil it down to five. Give me
mm-hmm.
just five things. And so I wrote this book to help mainly new administrators, but also veteran administrators that are just trying to figure out, like, how do I focus my time and my energy? What are those five things? And it's straight leadership. How do I lead
Mm-hmm.
my school? Instruction, community, attendance, and culture. And in my experience, focusing on those five elements will move a school forward. Administrators get bogged down in just the 8,000 other things that they're worried about. But if you connect it to one
Sure.
of those five, hey, that's a focus area and we can move forward on that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and you told me in the pre-chat there's a lot of administrators who do a lot of things that mediocre, right? They do a lot more of the stuff mediocre, but like you say, honing in these things, these five things can help reduce the admin stress level, and it also
Yes.
maybe will revitalize some admin who are veteran who feel like it's kind of a slog to go into work.
So in the Principal's Desk Facebook group that I,
Mm-hmm,
I created 7 years ago,
mm-hmm,
has 235,000 administrators in it. That's when I hear about the burnout. I see it,
mm-hmm,
people,
mm-hmm.
and I have 15 years of doing this, and I'm exhausted. I don't know how many more years I could do this, but I don't know how much years to retire. And so I think now post COVID, in this world that we live in, educators at every level are
Mm-hmm.
stressed, burned out, exhausted. Doesn't matter if you're the bus driver or the superintendent or anyone in between. It's very stressful. And what we see is we have a lot of people doing a lot of different jobs, serving a lot of different roles, and not doing the best job because they're spread too thin.
Sure.
So if we can bring it back and say, hey, do these five things, focus on these five things, you'll do
Mm-hmm.
them very well rather than do 15, 20 things mediocre, like you said.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you brought the fact that you have this Facebook group up, and
Mhm.
so how did that start? You say you kind of just let it go. I mean, you're not that involved in the group anymore, but you said it got started. You started with a principal's desk blog, and then it turned into a Facebook group. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I wanted a place to blog, and I didn't really
Mm-hmm,
know what I was doing. So I started a website. It's called Principal's Desk, and I post my blogs on there. But okay, that's great. But how do you tell people about where your blog is?
mm-hmm,
Okay, like social media, Facebook, and at that time, Twitter and Instagram. And so I was like, okay, well, how do I post them? I was trying to figure out how this whole thing works.
mm-hmm,
And there were a lot of education Facebook groups that were out there, but I was like, oh, I'll just start my own because I don't want to deal with everyone else's, like, the rules that they have, and I can post this, but I can't post that,
mm-hmm,
because you can
mm-hmm,
decide that as a admin for a Facebook group. So I created my own called the Principal's Desk, and I invited people I knew. So I had like 100 people in there for like the first, I don't know, 6 months or so. And then people started like requesting to join it. And I thought that was weird because I was the only one posting in it for the most part. I would say after 2, 3 years, we had 25,000 people in there. And
mm-hmm,
I was floored. I was like, I can't believe this many people are in here. Fast forward to now, 235,000 educators representing most of the countries across the world in the principal's desk. I have an assistant principal's desk group with 90,000, school counselors group with, I believe, 25,000, and again, representing educators from across the world. But people will come to these groups for advice, to
Hmm.
post like, hey, this is what's going on. What do you all think? And within minutes, just people are posting suggestions, comments, giving advice, posting links to resources. And I've been to conferences and I've gone out to districts and spoken about professional development, and I'll mention it like, hey, you should check out this Facebook group. And for the most part, people will say, oh, yeah, I'm a member.
Hmm.
I don't usually say I started that group, you know, because it's not about me, it's about the
Hmm.
resources in the group. And I do post in there. But I don't by any means control what's
Yeah.
posted in there. I mean, I am admitting from the background, making sure everything is safe and appropriate.
Hmm.
But you know, the amount of posts, the amount of people that are in there, it's been quite a journey. That's where the
Hmm.
book came from. And a lot of the work that I do come from people in that group who just they want more, and I'm happy to work with them.
Hmm. Hmm. And so, how long ago was the original group established?
It was established, say about 7, 8 years ago now. So it's
Okay.
been a while, but only in the last, I'd say, 4 years. It was in during COVID
Hmm.
when it blew up, and
Really
I was
took off.
getting
Okay.
thousands of requests a week to join. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And do you still post blogs or at least talking points or questions on there pretty
Oh,
often?
I do. I
Uh,
post blogs in there. I try every week to write something new. So there and there, my blogs are getting about 500,000 reads a year,
mhm,
and mainly through my groups. And so, yeah, I mean, and I'll answer questions in there, and it's fun. You know, I'll pop in from
mhm,
time to time, and it's fun because I'll get someone, and it happens actually more often than I would think, but someone who vehemently disagrees with what I'm saying. And
mhm.
even though it says admin right next to my name, it's just funny because they'll go out and they'll challenge me on it, and I think it's great. I don't mind
Yeah,
doing that at all because hey, we all have different viewpoints, and everyone's viewpoint
sure.
is valid, and we have different experiences. I'm sharing mine. That doesn't mean I'm right 100% of the time either.
Mhm, mhm,
So these different viewpoints, whatever the original poster is getting out of it, that's what's important. But
mhm.
it's fun. I get in there and I like to mix it up from time to time.
Yeah, yeah. You also do some blogs around themes, and I have one that I picked out for mid-June. It was about 30 themes for the upcoming school
Oh yeah.
year. So you tend, now that we're recording in the summer, but you tend to circle around maybe some of these things like school year themes. And
Mhm.
what is something maybe you would like to just point out maybe from that particular blog?
That blog came around with, again, just what people were posting in the group.
Hmm. Hmm.
I would see hundreds of posts saying, hey, we're trying to figure out our theme for next year. What have you got?
Yeah.
And so people would post one or two, like, oh, like, under the sea, or like the
Yeah.
safari, or like, shoot for the moon. And so I was like, you know what? Let me I'm gonna just brainstorm this and see what I come up with. So I think I did 10
Hmm.
elementary, 10 middle, 10 high
Yeah.
school, and I grabbed these from different areas. But again, trying to alleviate the stress of like, where do I find this answer and where do I go? It's like, oh, this is already there's 30 that are right here. So you know, uh, we'll take one from there. So I like to
Hmm.
listen to the group, and I like to respond and have my post be relevant to them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And from looking at just some of these different themes, I know like being in a school that does a lot of high stakes testing, you can make a theme around testing, but not everybody has really thought about making themes for back to school, right? They make themes for dances, for testing, for Spirit Week. But really
Right.
having kids come back, get excited about the first couple of weeks of school is really important as well. So you also do education news,
Mhm.
curated content as well. Are there any maybe in a way maybe politically charged questions that you put out there in terms of like first, let's say banned books or something that you might
Mm,
want to get like a poll response from your members or any of those types of things?
I usually steer clear of the
Okay,
politically charged things. That's when I notice just the vibe changes.
sure.
And I actually have to get involved as an admin, and I have removed
Mm-hmm,
posts. I don't like to censor content at all, but
mm-hmm,
when we go from uh comments that are, people believe strongly in, which is fine, but there's a
mm-hmm,
line. And I don't want to get anybody, have anybody be personally attacked, and that has happened. And I do step in, I remove posts, and I do message members saying, hey, disagree with the idea, not the person necessarily. Like,
mm-hmm,
and there are some very emotionally charged things that are out there right now, ban books being one of them.
mm-hmm,
You know, uh, I'll go on record right now saying that I don't believe we should be banning any books. I
mm-hmm,
don't believe in that type of censorship at all. As a parent of two kids, I want to be the one that gets to decide what my kids can and cannot see. I don't like that dictated by necessarily somebody else.
mm-hmm.
That's more, I believe, where I step in as a parent. Um, People have posted about that, and
Yeah,
again, it starts to get personal. I like to avoid that.
yeah. Yeah, so that's a good kind of clarification when you are moderating groups that have so many members, right? Like how to avoid like things getting out of hand, or people breaking the rules and it falling through the Facebook cracks and those types of
Right,
things.
right,
Because we do have a lot of varying opinions, even if you hadn't put out a poll, or these things do inadvertently get brought up, I think, through conversation sometimes as
sure.
well. So, but it sounds like you're people are keeping at least pretty level-headed, which might not be apply to all the Facebook groups for educators out there, which sometimes people could get in a lot of discussions. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing on a daily basis now. So you're no longer a principal, but you are working for Go Noodle.
Yeah, I do work for Go Noodle. I also work and consult with a variety of different ed tech companies
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
well. I work directly with schools, so I'm a school consultant as well. I do personal leadership coaching, and so I stay within the realm of education with everything that I do.
Okay.
So I'm lucky in the fact that my career is interesting, where I do a lot of different things at the same time and pivot when I need to. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that depends on, time in the school year, but then also just what's going on in education at the time and where people need support.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And some of the Marzano training, is that something that Marzano then send you out to
Mhm.
different districts for to work with?
Correct. And so
Mm-hmm.
a district will want to bring in one of Marzano's ideas, with like high reliability schools or, um, PLC work, and I will get sent out as a consultant to help that district
Mm-hmm.
um, launch those new initiatives.
Mm-hmm. What do you think in the last year has been something that you've been working with schools most on? Is it PLC, school culture, standards-based grading?
I've done some standards-based
Uh-huh.
grading. School culture is
Mm-hmm.
pretty much that seems to be the ticket right now. I think schools and educators are still reeling from COVID, and
Yeah.
in larger districts, attendance is an issue. We have a lot of declining enrollment within schools, in large urban centers, and just schools trying to figure out how to maintain their level of instruction and just what they're able to do with kids with less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
ESSER funding is about to end here. We're in the summer recording this, so ESSER funds
Yeah.
have to be earmarked by September, and those go away. Just last week, I saw information that Title I funds might be slashed by up to
Wow.
25%,
Wow.
which is huge. And so it's not like schools want to cut services or cut what they're able to do for kids. So they're going to try to figure out ways, how do we continue to maintain the same level with a lot less funding?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a tricky one as well. If you had that experience when you were a principal, um, was there a way that you were still able to serve the needs of your staff and your district
We
demands with less funds. Do you have any experience from that as a principal?
Yes, I do. It's I mean, we got very creative with a lot of things.
Yeah.
I begged a lot
Yeah.
of, different, businesses in the community. The other thing that districts has already started to do, and we did this as a school, and my districts did these as well, is you really look at what you are spending your money on and
Yeah.
what's nice to have versus what you have to have.
Hmm.
And we were able to cut things from our budget that we really didn't need and we really didn't use. And we didn't really
Hmm.
feel the difference when it was gone. And so it can be done. It can be difficult, you know, uh, but it's the reality of the situation.
Hmm.
And so, you want to avoid having less, less staff, less materials and resources for kids. So what can we take away that doesn't directly impact?
Yeah, but that's a good way to think about it. If people are needing different PD and or there's demand for it, but not that external funding come in. So
Mhm.
yeah, well, we've
Yeah.
had a great conversation today around your book, around some of the themes that you've written about on your blog and the Facebook groups. Out of everything we've talked about today, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
I would say give yourself a break.
Hmm.
Yeah. Again, I said this a few minutes ago. This is a very stressful time in education. Everyone feels it. Doesn't matter if you're the bus driver, the superintendent, or a kindergarten teacher, or a cafeteria worker. Give yourself a break. Make sure that you are building time within your day for yourself. I don't care if that's a walk around the block when you get home, or taking your phone, putting it in another room for an hour and saying,
Hmm.
I'm gonna sit down on the couch and watch TV and I'm just going to zone out for an hour. It's very hard right now.
Hmm.
So we've lost a lot of great educators over the last few years to different industries, and just saying, hey, I just don't need this anymore.
Hmm.
If you're feeling that way, take time for yourself.
Hmm.
We all got into this profession for the same reason, that was to help kids. And so just remember that, but also take care of yourself at the same time.
Yeah, that's so important too. Take those breaks, right? You don't need to
Yeah,
always be available. Where can people connect with you and find you online besides the
sure.
Facebook groups?
You can find the Facebook group, Principal's Desk. You can go to my website, principalsdesk.org, or email is david@theprincipalsdesk.org as well. If you have any questions, or would just like to chat, yeah, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you.
Great, great. Well, I'll make sure to put those in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today, for being on the Out of the Trenches podcast. And if anybody would want to join any of those Facebook groups, those will be in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.